Welcome to the Mindset RX podcast, a show for functional athletes who want to build a champ's mindset. Today's show is very different. I'm actually interviewing the newest member of the Mindset RX team, Josh Warren. Josh is a fantastic coach, and I decided to bring him on after he completed the Mindset RX coaching certification. He's got an amazing story. He's an incredibly kind and compassionate human being. I won't give his intro away or won't make it too long because, quite frankly, he does that for himself. So if you enjoy the show, of course, head over to iTunes, leave a 5-star review or share it with a friend. But mostly just listening to Josh's amazing humility and character that he's crafted for himself. And also hopefully you can take away some core concepts of getting through hardship, I think is probably the big one here, and maintaining perspective. So without further ado, I was doing so well. This is the first time I record this intro. Anyway, without further ado, here is Josh Warren. You two will get the Knight Rider theme entrance if you're lucky. I never pointed out that intro came from like a friend of mine called Nick, who goes by the name of Oak for all his music. And I still haven't pointed it out. That sounds a bit like Knight Rider, but I'll get that one. Anyway, man, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Cool. So I think in the intro I would have introduced like who you are and kind of what you're doing, but let's start on some common grounds. Let's talk about like what kind of training you do and kind of touch on some of the interesting ways you've gone down training routes.
So currently I'm kind of in a rehab kind of phase. I've been dealing with kind of knee issues for 10 years now. It initially kind of training started when I was like 13. And that was just because I was this really fat kid. And people, I say that now, people laugh at me. They're like, there's no way you were fat. And I'm like, listen, you don't understand. It was a while ago, but it was still. And so I was in that phase when I was 13 and I was just trying to lose weight. So I started doing, whatever I could get a hold of. And as far as like a magazine, I would just follow whatever, the latest fitness buff advised, and who knows what kind of quality magazine that was. So I have no idea. And then it kind of transitioned after losing some weight, to training for sports. I got into, I was playing like rec league basketball. I was playing high school rugby, high school football. And then it went into training for college football, where I played for 4 years. And there I got introduced to CrossFit a little bit. We had a shift in coaching my sophomore year. And they brought in this CrossFit style football workout, which looking back at it, it's not really like traditional CrossFit. It's very much like what people call high intensity interval training, is essentially, I don't even like using that, but it's essentially what people would call it nowadays. And kind of from there, my transition was straight into CrossFit after college football, because I fell in love with it. And I love the competition side of things. As far as like a motivator and something to kind of push through. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm in a rehab stage right now, finally dealing with the knee issues that came from growing pains, just kind of gut dysfunction, just lifestyle habits, and then also the damage from football and just terrible lifting styles.
As we've all done at some point. Yeah. The thing that continues to impress me is like, and how deep you've gone in this tunnel. So why don't you give us a bit of background about the kind of the education side and kind of your qualifications around coaching and the kind of some of the stuff that you coach about as well?
Okay. So yeah, it started out with kind of me just educating myself, as far as like how to fix myself. I mean, it's kind of a constant process of I am my own experiment, essentially. And through that, I started to kind of find a love for coaching because like I realized that all these things that I was learning, and not all of it was from school. Quite a bit of it was from school, but there's also a lot that I've kind of learned all on like podcasts that I've read, research articles that I've just kind of scavenged through. And so it started out in undergrad, actually. I got a coaching job at a CrossFit gym after getting my level 1. Also, at the same time, I was doing my senior thesis, and I was training the softball team. And so I did research. I designed my own program. We did pre and post testing on strength, speed, and endurance. I was somewhat limited on the lifts that I was allowed to do because they had the belief system that anything overhead was bad for a softball player. There's some nuance in that, but I'm not going to argue that on this. And so I did that. We had huge results. I only trained them for 4 weeks. And as a team, they had back squat increase as a team 300 pounds. Front squat almost 300 pounds as well. Bench like 200 pounds. Deadlift almost 300 pounds as well. And then their mile time went down by 10 seconds on average. And then their speed went down by 0.3 of a second. And this is all in 4 weeks. And I was like, well, maybe we should change, or just kind of investigate this more, the way that we kind of view training and what they were doing previously. And then from there, I went into coaching CrossFit more. I was kind of at will of whatever, kind of the management wanted. And that's kind of been the case with a lot of my coaching jobs with CrossFit. But I mean, I also in there, I've coached people, and and this is where I started to kind of dive into more aspects other than just the physical side of things. Is people would come to me for advice, and training in the gym would essentially become, as a coach, it would become like you're a therapist in a sense. You're that person that they confide in. You're that person that they come to with, they're having some gut pain, they're having some digestion issues, they're having vision problems, they're having like joint pain, and they're having all these different issues, or they're having relationship issues, and they come to you with all of this. And it's been an evolving process. I've coached 2 different CrossFit gyms, collegiate setting, kind of one-on-one private setting. I've coached kind of like workshops. I've done workshops and seminars as well, kind of more intimate settings. And right now I coach at the Employee Wellness Program for Cal State Fullerton. And it's been a process where I've kind of just dove into all these different kind of categories where people are saying that you should be an expert in, like only focus on that one thing. I like to say like become that one trick kind of pony. And it just kind of shows, and throughout this process kind of shows like how everything affects everything. And I used to think like, why are these people telling me to be an expert in this one thing? Because if someone comes to me, like when I was coaching CrossFit, if someone comes to me with this issue, I'll just be like, I don't know. I have to refer you out to this person. And then if you have another issue, I have to refer you out to this person because that person can help you. And it just became this thing of like, how can I best serve this person that I'm dealing with, regardless of the problem they have. And through that, I've kind of come to where stress is kind of a big factor, and nervous system and breathing, which is where I got involved with XPT Life through PJ, and it's been such a huge thing. Like we can go talk about nutrition, and we could sit here and talk for days on end about nutrition and how these different things could affect the way that you're eating, and what you're eating could affect these different things, and how mindset would play into that as well. And we could go on that. But breathing is for everyone. And not saying that food's not for everyone, food is for everyone. Just to be clear on that one. But breathing is something that costs no money to train, is something that we do every day and is necessary to do every day. And it's like, people don't understand the fact that the numbers are different on this one, but you take over 20,000 breaths a day, maybe. And after 20,000 times a day, over weeks and months and years like that starts to add up really quick. Quicker than, 3 meals a day, or, an hour of exercise a day. That plays big into kind of how you develop as a human being, physiologically. It plays into your health, plays into the development of your muscles, of your skeletal structures. And it plays a huge role in stress. And that's kind of where I'm coming at it from now, is kind of looking at stress, kind of how we can manage things through our breath, and then how we can kind of create that lifestyle where you're kind of thriving. And it's a big centering around breath. But I also like to touch on the other things that we kind of all traditionally touch on, but I feel like there's less and less people kind of going towards the breath side of things, or even starting there.
Yeah, and what I like about it, and obviously I've told you this before, but part of the reason why I decided to bring you on board is because you provide that balance in the nervous system, and kind of you add to the way that mindset's taught with that. So how did mindset become a thing for you? How did that kind of pop up as something of interest?
Right. So I got a funny story for you on this one. I'm an avid YouTube video podcast listener. And I say YouTube because I don't have an iPhone. I'm not cool enough for that club. So I don't go through iTunes. I watch the actual videos. And I don't remember who it was through. It may have been Barbell Shrugged. But I somehow stumbled upon like one of your first ever like videos. I think back when you like had a different name on YouTube. I just remember I think it was like you with this like bland white wall, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing about, but bland white wall, you had this white shirt, and it was like terrible lighting, and it was like a 9-minute video, and I don't even remember what you said in it. I just remember like watching it, and I was like, like, okay, I'll subscribe to this. And then I kept listening to more and more, and I just kept kind of diving into kind of listening to more people talk on mindset, different practices, different ways to view things. But I mean, as far as like diving into kind of like mindset work, I think the kind of curiosity, looking backwards, has always kind of been there, because I've kind of been introspective for quite some time. I usually tell people, like, most people think about like 3 to 4 things at any given time. And I was like, but I think about like 15. And it's like, and they're usually like things on like that I could be doing better, or just like questions that I have. So like it's just been a huge kind of asking more questions, kind of digging deeper into why, and kind of trying to understand that, and getting into mindset work kind of showed up as far as like the injuries that I've been dealing with. Because I mean, I feel like it's not like I'm some special butterfly that's like found this route. Because I mean, I'm sure it's someone else. This is the same story as quite a few people, I'm sure. But the injury kind of allowed me to kind of focus on what I can focus on, and control what I can control. And the way that I think, the way that I view things, the way that I act, has been a big part of controlling what I can control and getting this injury to heal, and then being able to get back to being able to train how I want to train, compete how I want to compete, and do the things that I want to do physically. And it's just been, it's been an awesome process since then. Been an avid listener. I've also been reading on my own several books. Took a class under Tracy Statler at Cal State Fullerton, which was an awesome class, even though she slightly intimidates me as a professor. But yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, watching your growth. I think you reached out to me about maybe a year ago or 18 months or something like that, and you're like, "Yeah, I want to intern." And it was some sort of message like that, and I had no idea about how the coaching cert would go, or whether there would be a coaching cert at any time. So it's been awesome to see you coming on board. Before we get into the coaching cert and your progress as a Mindset RX coach and that side of things, tell me more about hardship and that side of things, and challenges as well.
Yeah. So these are usually somewhat difficult to talk about, just because I never want to frame anything for anyone as far as putting pity on myself, or I never want to use it to cause someone else to kind of have a negative perspective on whatever they're going through, or kind of belittle someone else. But I usually whenever I start to share kind of what I've gone through as far as hardship, I only ever want it to be something that's going to be serving for someone else in some kind of positive manner, whether that's inspiration, kind of comfort, or just trust and kind of compassion. But yeah, it's been quite some ride throughout life. Growing up, me and my brothers, we kind of saw some things in the home that weren't exactly easy to deal with, as far as the way that our parents interacted, the things that were addictions that shouldn't have been addictions, and then the kind of examples that I had growing up with some of the things that happened in my family was they were examples where you can either follow in those footsteps, and a lot of people do, or you can learn from their mistakes. And I tried to do my best to kind of learn from their mistakes. And throughout kind of growing up, it was a process of dealing with this hardship, and embracing those things is it kind of forces you to grow up a little bit faster. And it kind of continued through high school, where I started making some bad choices, because I think everyone in high school makes some pretty bad choices. We all continue to make bad choices, because none of us are perfect. We make mistakes, but excuse me. But it ended up leading to a place where, because I tried to grow up so fast, and I distanced myself from the kind of negativity that was happening, I ended up kind of dealing with this feeling of kind of being alone. And it wasn't just time to time, feeling like being alone. It was habitual. It was day in, day out. Even if I was in a crowd of people, or if I was in an intimate setting with one person, I still kind of felt alone. And I started kind of seeking the wrong things, as far as ways to kind of combat that feeling, to kind of feel that connection with someone or something. And it's been a pretty lengthy process, and that journey was pretty difficult. It ultimately led to a place where I would have been clinically diagnosed as depressed, probably for quite some time, had I gone to see a doctor, or had I talked to anyone about my problems. And it ultimately led to me attempting suicide. And that was at the age of 18 or 19. I'm not entirely sure what age that was. But thank God that that attempt failed, or else I wouldn't be here today with this podcast. But that was probably the kind of lowest moment, and I kind of dipped into that kind of moment twice, at least, throughout that process. And since then, I mean, things have kind of still been a roller coaster. I mean, I feel like life is constantly kind of up and down as far as the things that we go through. But I mean, more hardships have come. And the thing is like that throughout these hardships, that it just keeps kind of strengthening and kind of growing you. I know it's the cliche to say like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I know that there's some nuances around that, as far as like how that should be phrased and rephrased. But in that scenario, that was definitely true. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful every single day that I'm alive, and that's something that has kind of pushed me further in kind of how I deal with people as far as coaching. And other hardships have come. I mean, for instance, I'm the first person in my family to go to college and graduate. And that's not easy, especially when you're playing football, going to school, and working a job. And there's been nuances, and kind of arguments and added stress from, the financial side of that. And then I was in an almost near-death experience as far as a car wreck after I graduated, like the day after I graduated from undergrad, which, I mean, it's not something that put me necessarily in a hard place, but mentally it put me in this kind of state of like, crap. Like, I came out of that with like just like cuts and bruises, but I should be dead looking at what happened. And it's just been continuously kind of like a smack in the face, like a wake up call. And it's been I mean, for me personally, I think it's been kind of the Lord correcting me in my ways of thinking and the way that I've been kind of leading my life. And then following that one, I had applied to come to Cal State Fullerton for grad school. In that, and there's some caveats to this one. I had just enough money to apply for one grad school, because they charge you for every single place that you send an application. So I was like, you know what? I want to learn from these people out there in California. And I was like, this would also be a decent way to possibly get away from some of this negativity that I was in. And so I sent the application, and in my mind, I was like, you know what? I might not be good enough for this. Kind of that those old ways of thinking of like being alone and kind of having those insecurities from being that kind of fat young kid who didn't really have any friends who kind of just stuck to the books. I got in, and then it was a matter of, I heard from them late. And then it was like I had all this resentment from family, friends, because in the South, which is where I'm from, they have this kind of mindset and way of thinking of like, we're born here, we're raised here, we're going to stay here. And that doesn't just mean like within your family, but that means like, geographically as well. So like moving to California to most of my friends and family was like moving to another planet. And I'm sure some people would argue that is exactly what it's like, but there was a lot of resentment. So there was a lot of added stress from that. And then in the process of moving out here, I moved out here and I had just enough money to make it out here, where I had like $5 in my bank account once I got here. And luckily, student loans came through the day that I got here so that I could move in and then I could have a meal plan, because otherwise I would have had $5. And then following that year was super tough because I was coaching and I was not sleeping most nights, and I was full-time grad student. And I was working another job as well. And then if you fast forward a year, I ended up, through financial circumstances, relationship circumstances, bad choices on my end, of being in a place where it was either, go move up somewhere with a friend who said that they could house you, but you're not going to have a job for the summer and you have bills to pay that keep coming in. Or it was, not live in a house, be homeless, live out of the back of your car for who knows how long, and work these 3 jobs that you have. And then, fall semester rolls around and then it's like, go back to school and work these jobs and live out of your car. And that was another kind of place where, hardship kind of kept like hitting me in the face, or, even better, like the stomach, because, I think hunger definitely drives a lot of things. And it was a position where I would park at like a Walmart parking lot, and I would sleep there most nights. And it's something that kind of opened my eyes as far as what we take for granted in life. And that's a big one, is kind of the comfort of living in a home or an apartment or just a place with walls. Is that when you sleep in your car, like you have this like small piece of thin glass that is like right there next to you. That's the only thing keeping you safe from whatever may be outside, whether that be heat, whether that be weather, whether that be someone that's got some bad intentions, or some other car hitting you. And it just like that adds a ton of kind of stress. And that's such a kind of overpowering kind of cycle that your brain goes through, especially when you try to sleep. And if you've ever studied sleep at all, we all know how important it is. And not only that, but because of the money situation I was in, there were days where I didn't eat, and not by choice. It wasn't like I was trying to do intermittent fasting or anything. Like it was, I didn't have the money or the means to afford a meal, and I didn't have a choice, so I would just not eat. And then that I mean, sometimes it went 2-3 days. And that becomes a process where your brain constantly thinks like, crap, I don't know where my next meal's coming from, so I better eat whatever I'm going to get. And you definitely can't be choosy with your nutrition choices. And when it did become a situation where I had a little bit of money to eat something, it becomes, because you're trying to save whatever money you do have, you don't make the best choices. So, I mean, a great way to get calories in is like that's super cheap is McDonald's and donuts, you know? I mean, besides donuts being like one of my favorite desserts, they are a great way to get calories in, and they're like $1. But just, I mean, through embracing those kind of hardships, it's been kind of a great way to kind of be able to show that compassion to other people in their circumstances. And I mean, it may be different circumstances, but we all embrace hardship to some degree, and through different things. And it's just, I mean, it's a testament to, I mean, I don't know very many coaches that show a ton of compassion. Like I've had maybe 7 or 8 different coaches throughout my like athletic career, if you want to call it a career. I don't know what word you want to use. And I've never met any of them that just like truly show compassion day in, day out, no matter the circumstance. I mean, I'm not saying that none of them ever showed compassion, but it seemed to be kind of very situational, very feelings driven for them. And that's something that I've kind of taken these kind of experiences, and I've kind of wanted to do that for the people that I work with. And so it becomes less of, I'm going to write this program for my athletes and they're just going to follow it to a T. And if they don't follow it to a T and get results, they did something wrong because I did everything right, you know? And for me, it's kind of been, taking those lessons from those hardships and the correction and the learning that I've had from those, and applying it to the way that I deal with people one-on-one in a group setting, through online programming and coaching. I mean, through video calls, through whatever kind of interaction, because even if you're in a group setting, that person is perceiving the way that you treat them and the way you act. Even if they're in a group, they're still perceiving it almost as if it's one-on-one. And I never want anyone to feel like I don't care for them. And I think that that's something that I work on and I continue to work on because I'm still learning on this. But I think that that's something that kind of sets what I do as a coach apart from what I've been exposed to as far as an athlete. Because I don't treat everyone that I work with, whether in a group or an individual, I treat them as an individual, and I tailor whatever I do with them to them. And I try to do that with the utmost understanding, and I'm working on that. That is not done. That is a continuous process. But I'm doing that with as much, compassion, and I'm taking all these things that I've learned through school, through education, through experience, and I'm trying to kind of tie all that together so that I provide the best possible kind of all around approach for this person in their individual life. If that makes sense. Sorry, I kind of went on a soapbox.
Absolutely. The soapboxes are good. Like this whole podcast is my soapbox. So you're good. The thing I've got to say is firstly, thank you for sharing all that. Like I can't imagine how tough it is to share some very personal stuff. But the reason that I asked you is so, like, I'm sure you know this, is because for some people that would be such an inspiring story to see that you've taken such kind of difficult circumstances, and from that you've forged your own character of someone who is compassionate and caring, kind of against all odds. You've made yourself and given yourselves the option. And I'm sure you had difficult choices in there, and you probably made the wrong decisions, like you mentioned, and like you said, we've all made wrong decisions, but you've come out of that with like an incredible sense of what's right and wrong. And I can give you all the reasons why I think you're the best person to take on as the first coach in Mindset RX. But that compassion you have, it's evident in every action. And to see your interactions on such a regular basis in like the Inner Athlete Performance Camp and the coaching cert, just like you get it, like you care, and that comes away in everything you do. So thank you for that. Like it's so important to say. And like when I read your check-ins on a daily basis, like so for the people listening, in the Inner Athlete Performance Camp and the coaching cert, it's a case of every day we check in the morning and the evening, and your replies are just like, yes, you nailed it, because you care so much, and it's such a privilege to see. And before I get too nice to you, I just want to say thanks for being that person, man. It's and thanks for being an inspiration to people, because it really is amazing. And like any kind of segue from that is going to be clunky, so forgive me. When you let's go to like the coaching cert and your kind of enrollment within it, and what made you apply to begin with?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, thank you for those nice words. I'm always surprised when you start going off on those things, because I'm like, I don't attribute the work that, or the change that has happened and the lessons that I've learned, I don't really attribute that to me. I attribute it to God, who's been working kind of in my life through in my heart, and has kind of caused those changes. So I just thank you for those kind words. As far as getting into kind of the coaching cert and into kind of wanting to take this route and this path of becoming, a coach for mindset, is with kind of dealing with the stress side of things, with doing breathing, and in XPT we also do like heat and ice exposure, which is another big way of handling stress, and definitely gets people into the deeps and dirties of their kind of mindset without really having to kind of poke and prod through their language or anything like that. It kind of brings it to the surface really quick. And it's been through kind of doing that work and through taking that class here at Cal State Fullerton, and talks with colleagues who are in the kind of more specialized or more focused on like the sports and exercise psychology side of things, is kind of it's piqued my interest, and it's been one of those things where like through my coaching career, I've kind of touched on those things with clients, or just athletes that I've worked with, indirectly. Because like I said, I mean, earlier, like, we become that kind of therapist, that person that they confide in. And I just kept with trying to show compassion to them. I kept trying to give them, kind of things that they could work on without telling them what to think, or how to necessarily sit there and view the situation. Because then I'm imposing my own will on their work. And throughout that process, that's kind of been where I've kind of had that desire to go into how can I affect this person in a way that it's their lifestyle, and not just a movement kind of piece where I correct the way their knee wobbles on a squat, which is great, but that's kind of a one movement, one modality kind of correction. It might play into the rest of their life, but if they don't squat for the rest of their life, it doesn't really matter that I did that. And so, but getting into, the stress, how to handle that, breathing, and then getting into kind of their mindset and how they view things, how they talk to themselves, how they approach situations, how they they get things done and how they don't get things done, is kind of where this kind of sparked, and kind of like, this is how I could have the biggest impact on this person's life without, you know, kind of bringing them in, like letting them live with me, you know, cradling them and like just like showing them how to live their life, you know, allowing them to kind of create their own lifestyle that works best for them, that allows them to reach that full potential of whatever they want to achieve, physically or career wise or relationship wise or whatever it may be. And throughout the kind of coaching cert, I was actually a little like hesitant. I think just because I didn't really know what to expect coming into it. Like, I mean, I've listened to like your podcasts, and I've read some of your articles before coming into it, and I was like, I mean, I like what he puts out. Like, I like what he says in his podcasts. I was like, I like the view of stuff and like the simplicity. And I was like, but I don't know about this, you know, this commitment to a coaching certification. And I think I took like a week to kind of like mull over what, like the just signing up for it. And I think that kind of speculation or kind of hesitation kind of went into like the first week or two of getting started, along with like, you know, the time differences of posts and how they came in at weird times on my end of things. I was kind of slow to getting started, but I mean, I like quickly saw kind of the value of, you know, the exercises that we do, becoming more aware of like what's going on, and just the kind of way that I think, even first thing in the morning. And I would have never thought about like writing the stuff that we do at first thing in the morning. And like, if you would have told me that like a few years ago, I would have been like, get out of here, man. Like I'm not gonna do that. I have to like go work out, and I have to go work, and then like no, I'm not gonna do it. So that one was a big one. And it's been an awesome process since then. And it's definitely helped, clear the chatter from kind of my head, as far as like writing it down. Cause like I mentioned earlier, like my brain will think about like 15 different things like really quickly. It's kind of calmed that down a little bit, which has helped lower stress, which has helped get more clarity on the place that I want to go, as far as career. And it's also kind of helped see some things in the way that I act in relationships as well. Whether that's, you know, professional or kind of more personal relationships. It's been awesome. And I was a little bit thrown back by the offer as to be a coach. And I was like, when I read the message, I was like, wait a minute. I almost wanted to respond. I was like, did you mean to send this to me? But it's been awesome, man. I'm delighted and glad to be here for this.
Good, man. Yeah, and like as I've said before, and I'll continue to say, you're nailing it, and it's such a pleasure to have you on board. Just because you're so good at it as well. It's just like, oh, I don't need to worry. Josh is at the helm. He's got this. And yeah, I wouldn't say you're born for it, but you've crafted yourself to be excellent at it. And I can't wait to see what you bring to it, because there was a few things that I could think of when just considering who to hire. And it's like, who's going to first, I could either say who's going to like do the requirement. And like, there was a few people who fit into that category. But then secondly, and more importantly, who's going to build on this and add to it in a way that is unique to them, but also is going to bring something completely new to Mindset RX, and that's what you do. Not only in terms of the compassion that we talked about, but the outside knowledge and your training of nerve systems and the stuff you're doing with XPT and all that kind of stuff. So it is such a pleasure to have you on board, and I can't wait to see the way this progresses. And I think that's a brilliant place to round up. So thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability and all that kind of stuff. Actually, before we go, if people want to follow you on Instagram and that kind of stuff, where can they find you?
It's Instagram is at joshua.warren_. And then you can also do Facebook. I'm not as active on Facebook, but it's Joshua Warren. You'll see like pictures of me and my grandmother and like the random stuff that I do, like Civil War reenactments, maybe food posts, dancing, I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah, or underwater flossing with dumbbells.
There we go. Yeah, underwater dancing with dumbbells.
Yeah, pretty impressive. Anyway, man, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this, and thank you for being an incredible part of Mindset RX as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure, man.